This is for those who have watched my previous videos. These are the two stones that I was working on. I'll also try and remember to put a link to my Facebook page with more of my artwork. But today I wanted to talk about what is shadow work and what is consciousness. I didn't realize I was doing shadow work long before I even discovered the term, which in one way is you could look at it as just mentally processing the human experiences that we have. And so if I go back into my past, back when I was having the experience of what people refer to as Crohn's disease and fibromyalgia, I was very much placing a lot of power in the external over my internal. So I was always finding that more and more food was having a adverse reaction in my body. So, I would get to a point where I was managing things okay, but then more and more would start to fall apart. It was like there was a tolerance to certain foods that once I reached that tolerance point, then I would have massive reactions physically. But what I didn't realize at the time was that it was all connected to the mind, the emotions, energy. Like, it was a combination of everything. So at one point in my journey, I discovered carnivore diet. And because the person that was explaining their experience with carnivore diet had had such significant physical improvements, I thought I had nothing to lose at the time because my health was just constantly declining more and more. And so I tried it. And then because I had had such an incredible experience with it, I really believed in it myself. And so then the more I did it, the more it worked for me, to the point, and that was back when I was still engaging with mainstream medicine. And at one point it was quite funny because I had blood tests all the time. I was basically a pincushion for years. And the doctor couldn't believe the results of that blood test when I went full carnivore diet, because all of my levels were the best that they'd ever been. And then he actually found it hard to believe that carnivore diet was working when everything he knew, it should have been the opposite. My levels should have been worse, but they were literally perfect on all of their typical levels. But then as time went on, I started getting to the point where I knew that there was more. So I decided to start reintroducing different foods. And then I would have reactions. And so one of the times when I was having a reaction, I realized there was different stories in my mind that were playing out. And then it was just blindingly obvious one day that, oh wow, these are just someone else's stories that I've bought into, that I've taken on as part of my story. And so then I thought, well, carnivore has worked so well, why don't I just start making up my own experience? And part of that was really understanding, if you look at studies with anything medical, and they have, statistics of things are more likely to happen, blah, 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 with different procedures or whatever. They're all someone else's story. So you don't know what mindset they've had, what's in their subconscious, what they've actually asked to experience. So this ties into, prior to that, I'd actually said a lot that I've always been so curious. So I wanted to know what it was like to experience dying. So that I'd said so many times to so many people that, given the opportunity, if someone offered to stop my heart and then bring me back, I would love to experience death. And I didn't realize and I didn't understand intentions, law of attraction, manifesting, whatever labels you want to call it. But then I obviously got to a point where I did actually have that experience through life. And it was after that that it all started to make sense and really click that it's all vibrational. It's all the things that we've got running in what people refer to as the subconscious mind, which is just like, if you're eating, say you're eating any food, it doesn't matter what. Like, I mean, I'll use a bag of chips or crisps, depending where you are, as an example. Most people have been told that it's bad for you. So when you're eating something that you have in the back of your mind that this is bad for me, whether you're consciously thinking about it or not, it's a pattern in the energy field. So when I talk about patterns, there's so many different patterns, but that'll be in the vibration field. So then that's going to be the impact. And so what I was experiencing was I'd taken on all of those patterns from, generational and societal, and, and obviously some of the experiences that I had just made the assumption that it was the food, but it wasn't, until I really started doing a deep dive and looking at myself and going, what am I contributing to this? What am I? And the biggest part I learnt was when I was suppressing my emotions and not actually feeling my emotions, that was actually the biggest cause of everything. And so consciousness is just bringing the unconscious to the conscious. So the things that we do, but we don't know why we do them, paying attention to every word that comes out of our mouth, and understanding why we say the things that we say. And then there's the other side of that, which is the intuition, which, there's been so many times in my life where something has just come out of my mouth and I never knew, it was sometimes things that I never even wanted to say because sometimes they were offensive or, whatever. But it just came out. It was like I had no control. And I used to think that I had no filter, but in those moments with where I'm at now, I understand that was moments where my higher self had actually taken over to deliver a specific message to a specific person. And the only reason I'm aware of that now is because I'm consciously aware of my intuition, that I'll actually get downloads to say different things to different people or interact with people in different ways. And I'll also be shown their patterns and, all of the things that are necessary for me to interact with them in a specific way to bring things to their conscious awareness, especially if they're replaying repeated cycles with me. And I mean, the only way that I really understand it is having deconstructed all of them within myself. So now it's really easy for me to understand and identify them in others, because it's like, anything you bring into your consciousness. So say something that happens so common is when you buy a car, if you've never paid attention to that car before, as soon as you buy it, you see that car everywhere on the road. It's like all of a sudden they've just appeared. They're always there, but you were just unaware of it because you weren't paying attention to it. And so it's exactly the same with patterns and cycles and, moments where we suppress our emotions or, any of those things. And it's the same when people get triggered. Whenever there's a trigger, there's always a deeper reason. It's always coming from something from the past. And something I realized was I was often replaying the same patterns and cycles from childhood, and then the more I understood my generational patterns, that took a lot of work to uncover the generational patterns. That was when I really began to understand why I was experiencing everything I was experiencing, plus the free will of me, me unconsciously manifesting different experiences too, like, you know, like asking to experience what it was like to die, and I didn't understand how powerful intentions were, and we do truly get what we ask for, and um, yeah, I'm being guided not to mention some of the others, um, but yeah, the more you look at, the more you remove the faces of the people that you're interacting with, and look at the energy, like look at the spirits, go, is this a repeated cycle? Something which was something I really learnt from. It was when I identified it, especially in romantic connections, that I was rinsing and repeating the same. It was different people, but it was the same exact relationship. It was like picking up where I left off with the last person. And that was because of my lack of accountability, where I wasn't seeing what I was contributing to. And I've mentioned some of the things in previous videos. But yeah, it's the more, and that's the thing, we can spiritually bypass a lot, and it seems like we've broken patterns, but sometimes we need to go deeper into a pattern for different reasons, different experiences. I will use a friend, for example. They were at the end of a relationship and then decided to go back one last time, and then realized that it didn't fit at all. And so then they realized they had actually outgrown it, but without going back that one last time, they wouldn't have been able to identify that it no longer served. But then it's being consciously aware if that same cycle is then going to repeat with other people. So it's really just a matter of conscious awareness, and being conscious of why we're doing what. And something that is really obvious is what you pay attention to. So the things that you're paying attention to online. So if you're constantly watching things that induce fear, which part of what I did for shadow work was intentionally watching fear-mongering campaigns, essentially, people talking about like worst case scenario all the time, and the more I exposed myself to that, the more it surfaced all of those things that were in my unconscious, so that I could bring them to my conscious awareness, and then really especially be consciously aware of my nervous system. And the more I became aware of my nervous system, the more I understood myself, because when you're what I would refer to as completely, there's different labels that you can use. There's hypervigilant, emotional dysregulation, sensory overload, it's all the same thing. It's all just where the emotional body has shut down and completely stuck in the mind, and just having it's when you're completely submerged in an old pattern, which that's actually the best time to identify the pattern and the cycle and deconstruct it. But part of that is actually getting regulated, so calming the nervous system. And then as soon as you calm, you usually find that it will just click, like it'll be so obvious and go, oh my God, how did I not see that before? But you need to get regulated for the higher self to bring it into the consciousness if you're actively doing it. Because sometimes, we will only see what we're ready to see. So if people aren't willing and ready to face their shadows, they'll constantly make excuses and stories, and that is part of it. It's acknowledging what stories and excuses we make for ourselves, and lack of self accountability, and what we're projecting, and also what we're absorbing from others too, because it is so easy to buy into somebody else's story, especially if you, like, say for example, someone who is constantly watching, mainstream media is really bad for it. It's, just constant bombarding of fear. So they're going to be constantly in that perpetual state of fear and sensory overload. And, that you really have to get to the point where you step away from it so that you can get the clarity and go, oh my God, wow, that's just, consuming fear and sensory overload and all of those things. So yeah, the more you pay attention to those little subtle, like for someone who isn't consciously aware that they're doing shadow work, the easiest way is to see how you feel. And you'll notice when you watch certain things, emotionally you'll have, it's almost like a little bit of a emotionally prickly feeling, but it's just this slightly uncomfortable sensation in your emotions. And you usually find it's when you've been suppressing your emotions a lot, it'll be very subtle. And so then you'll know that person, they're either, usually I've found when I sense that they're either completely dysregulated, or they've got ill intentions, or they're hiding something, something along those lines. You'll usually get those sensations from people, places, and things. And it's, you really, the emotions aren't just emotions, like they are truly our inner guidance system, but it takes time to really feel them, to understand all of the little nuances, because that's why for me it's so easy to read people now, because I understand why I feel anything. And it's how I've really learned how to enhance telepathy. And it's always quite funny when I message or call people and they're like, oh, it is the perfect time that you've rang, or the synchronicity. And it's always because I'm just tuned into the energy. And usually if someone is struggling and it's something that I can help with, especially if they're completely spiraling out of control, I'll usually get guided to reach out. But then there's the opposite. Sometimes they have to ask me. So it really just depends. I just go with what I feel. And that was part of really learning to understand my inner guidance system with my intuition, which now, I'm at the point now that I can just consciously get downloads of whatever it is that I want to know or understand, or if I'm interacting with someone, I'll usually get downloads to show me their patterns and what they're going through. And sometimes that'll be in the moment, sometimes that'll be before I meet them. Yeah, just, and it's not always, it's only if there's something that is really important that I don't miss. Like an example, years ago, I was out for a walk and I came across this girl and I could just see that she was holding back, like trying to hold it together, but she was, if you've ever experienced that point where life is just such a battle and you just feel like you need to just completely break down and just like burst into tears and just have someone to be like, it's going to be all right. She was at that point, and there was something in my intuition screaming at me to say to her, like, things will only get better from now, and, don't think like this is as good as it gets, because, when you hit rock bottom, the only place to go is up. But I didn't say it because I didn't know her. She was just a complete stranger. But the experience was, it stayed with me. And so now, anytime I get those intuitive hits to say something or do something, sometimes I'll get guided to just go out of my way to do something. Like some of my artwork, I've been guided to just create something for someone and just give it to them. And as well, understanding energy. I know the energy that goes into these, so they're not just a painting. And part of that was learning how to understand other people's artwork. So I had some incredible experiences with interacting with other people's artwork, and the things that I could sense in it, had people not confirmed the things that I got, I would have thought I was crazy with what I was getting. But they always said to me, like, especially when someone said, can you read this piece of artwork? And I described the person to a T from their artwork and I knew nothing about them. It was like, wow, there is so much in artwork that most people are just oblivious. And so now I don't look at artwork. If I see someone's artwork, I will look at it, but I'll tune in and see what I actually feel from it. So, if anyone out there is listening and they truly do tune into their emotions, go back to the start and see what you feel from those two stones that I showed at the beginning of this video. And, it's how you understand divine timing, and the more you understand the intentions that you set, the more you'll understand your current experiences, which is something I've always done, but I didn't understand, was seeing people's potential. And what it was I was tuning in, unaware that I was tuning in to their previous intentions that they had set, and then seeing their potential on where it was that they actually wanted to get to. And yeah, it's allowed me to understand how to read timelines and, trajectory. And then we've got free will though, so we can actually get in our own way by not listening to our inner guidance system and doing things on default that we know aren't the things that we want to be doing, but we do them anyway. And that's where we got to look at the stories that we make up and excuses we make up for, it's like saying yes when you really want to say no, or getting that hunch of wanting to do or say something but just not doing it. It's always been a learning experience to understand my own patterns and then deconstruct them. So now it's, I don't say yes unless I mean yes anymore. I used to be the biggest people pleaser and had the biggest people pleasing programs and patterns. And now it's like, if it's not serving both of our best interests, I'm not saying yes, because it's pointless. It's usually, drama and unnecessary, and it's just, not where I want to actually get to. So, um, yeah. And then divine timing, like I've literally just finished those two pieces of artwork and finished what I was speaking about. So that's, my sign that that's the end of this video. So I hope that helps, and I hope you have an incredible day.